This is Bryson's car. He found it, traded a dirt bike for it, and dragged it home on a trailer. He then spent nearly a year trying to get it to run. And then he left. He's gone for 2 years, and he really has no idea what I've been doing. I started with the engine because no car is worth its salt if it doesn't run. First, I just made it run, and then I pursued making it run well. I went through other mechanical items, wiring, brakes, suspension, wheels, and everything else I could think of to make the car reliable as a daily driver. I've been driving it myself for over a year, and with only a couple of rare exceptions, it hasn't let me down. So I'm feeling good about the mechanicals. And fortunately, the outside temperatures have been conducive to primer and paint, so I've been working as fast as I can to get that done. But I'm getting nervous about the finished product because Bryson's 2 years are nearly up. We're counting down his return in weeks, and I have a lot of work to do. These fenders have been primed, so it's time for guide coat and sanding. And sanding. And more sanding. Look, I'm a power tools kind of guy, so all this hand sanding is definitely not in my nature. But I don't think there's really another way to do it. And although it's tedious and monotonous and tiring, it's also amazingly satisfying. I'm hitting it here with the 220 grit to get it shaped. And mostly I use a square sanding block, but for the contours, this round block comes in really handy. Look at that. My first low spot. Ah, sweet! Looks like it's gonna sand out. Then once all the guide coat's removed and I feel like I have the shape that I want, I go to a 400 grit. The sealer I'm using says it will fill 400 grit sanding scratches, so that's why I'm using 400. I could make a pass at 600, but I don't know if it helps. And some sources indicate that it might actually even be harmful in terms of adhesion. Anyway, the 400 grit is the satisfying stage. Watching the sanding scratches from the 220 disappear as the surface goes smooth and semi-glossy is highly rewarding. Oh yeah. This one is ready to go back into the paint booth. Well, not gonna lie, my heart's beating pretty fast right now. I'm just a little bit anxious. I'm excited about what's happening, but I'm anxious because this is the real deal. The primer is pretty forgiving when you think about it. The idea is to put it on thick and then sand it down to get it smooth. The goal now is to cover up all the work that's been done perfectly. Now, let me clarify, not the work that's been done perfectly. The goal is to cover it up perfectly so that no more sanding is required. And unlike when I do a project for myself, where I can simply accept whatever work I do, this one isn't for me. And so it almost feels like holding myself to maybe a little different standard, a slightly higher standard. And just to keep it interesting, I'm using materials I've never used before, which by the way doesn't take much because I haven't used very many different materials. And an approach that I've never taken before. I painted a truck. My other son and I did that one together. But we did a simple single stage on that one. And while that job was fine, The intention really never was to have the level of perfection that I expect on this one. That one was, it's a square body pickup truck. Sure, you want it to be nice, but it's going to be driven by a 16, now 17-year-old boy parked in this high school parking lot. Really, how much work are you going to put into achieving a level of perfection on that versus something like this, where the goal is to present it to someone and, well, first impressions, right? So, I mean, look, I feel really good about the prep. Everything's been blocked down with a 220 and then down to a 400. And it's smooth. It looks good. The floor is damp. And I believe we have a sanitary room to work in. The plan of attack is this. The bottom of the hood is my test panel. Top coat on the hood. If it goes well, move on to the sunroof. If that goes well, go to the fenders. And then finally, at that point, it's kind of a point of no return. The clear coat would need to go on next. I recognize there's a little bit of an opportunity for some basic repairs of flaws in the middle with maybe some 600 grit. I'm hoping to not have to do that, but I recognize the level of professionalism here, which is very low. So we accept it for what it is. But I guess it's time. All things considered, that went very well. I do have a few dust nibs to deal with, and the dust nibs are more plentiful than they should be because I made a rookie mistake by painting in the same clothes that I had been sanding in. Next time, I'll either wear clean clothes or put on my super suit. But the surface looks good with no scratches showing through and minimal, if any, texture. And this coat has slow activator in it, so it'll have a little time to sit and lay flat. It also gives me time to prep for the next layer.